21, before that we get into Numbers 22, what was the big event that happens at Numbers 21 that we last talked about?
Bronze serpent.
Bronze serpent, yeah. So the people complain again, fiery serpents come. God doesn't just heal them. He has Moses create a bronze serpent, lift it up on a standard, lift it up on a pole, that everyone who looks on it will be healed, right? And then Jesus makes an analogy between that and himself, and says that he's going to be lifted up, and you need to look on him and believe. But what he's saying there, remember, their problem in Numbers is you did not believe, you did not believe, you did not trust, is what they'll say over and over and over again. And so when Jesus says, everyone who looks and believes, he's warning Nicodemus in a way, saying, hey, look, don't be like Israel in the past who didn't believe. Okay. Now, Jesus also talks about himself being lifted up, which will refer to crucifixion, which will have some tie-ins actually with what happens in Numbers 25, but we won't get ahead of that. Also in Numbers 21, that I forgot to put in there, is Israel. I'm just going to put this up here as a real quick little note. Defeats two kings. Okay, they defeat this one king called Sihon and this other king called Og. Okay, these are these kings of these different nations, these different groups that attack Israel, and God gives them victory over them before they get into the land. So it's kind of like a highlight that God is going to prepare them militarily to go in and take the land in the conquest, that they will be able to defeat people that are stronger than them. But this defeat, other kings in the region hear about it, and this starts to make them kind of understandably nervous. And so there is this king of, put this here, this king of the nation Moab, okay, named Balak, okay, and Balak starts to get nervous about Israel being in the land. So he says, okay, there are really numerous people, they've just defeated Sihon and Og, and so I'm afraid of what they're going to do. I don't know if I'll be able to meet them in military battle and win. So he kind of comes up with a different way of sorts to deal with them. And he's going to invite a kind of sorcerer prophet, Balaam, to try to say, okay, you're kind of a spiritist, you kind of are a sorcerer, you have kind of a touch with the spiritual. Can you come to me, I'll give you a bunch of money, and you curse Israel for me. Take the power from the spiritual world, bring it against Israel negatively. Now, God is not going to allow Balaam to do this, okay? He's going to turn the curse into blessing, and he's even going to use a bad guy and a false prophet, Balaam, to do that. So God even speaks through somebody who is not a good person, okay? Balaam is referred to negatively all throughout Scripture. In 2 Peter, in Jude, I believe in Revelation as well, they refer back to Balaam as a false prophet, a prophet for hire, okay? Meaning he can try to bring the spiritual things into this for money, okay? So, this is what's going on. Now, he's going to not be able to do this because God will intervene and say, I'm going to give you visions, I'm going to give you prophecy, but you can only say what I say. Nothing more, nothing less. And so God will multiple times bless Israel instead of cursing them. And that's going to make Balak mad. Okay? So, let me point out something real quick before we get into these texts here. Does Israel know that any of this is going on? I mean, Moses eventually figures out, obviously writes it down, but no, while it's happening, Israel has no idea. And Israel's track record through the book, as far as obedience or disobedience, what's their track record been? How have they been doing in the book so far?
Not good.
Not good. They're in the wilderness for 40 years because of their sin, disobedience, and unbelief. Okay? So, it's not good. God is dealing with them severely for their sin. But on the other hand, while this is going on, God is still blessing them when they don't deserve it. Okay? And that blessing, as we'll see, ties back to the Abrahamic covenant. Okay? But Balaam and Balak and the Moabites are basically going to try a different tactic to get Israel to disobey God and to get God to punish Israel. Now, he doesn't punish them to extinction, but it is a very severe punishment, and there's very severe sin that happens in Numbers 25. And so instead of trying to get Balaam to curse them, instead of meeting them in war, what they come up with, the Moabites send in, Israel can deal with war, they can deal with false prophecy, but what they can't deal with, or won't deal with, is the temptation to sexual sin and idolatry, which usually are tied together. Because in most ancient religions, and that's true today too, is that usually false worship, false religion is tied with sexual sin. And that was how you got closer to the gods, was through sex acts and orgies and things that were, immoral. Okay, and that's why books like Leviticus are actually important, because Leviticus, it even has laws for when a married couple, man and a wife, they are partaking in the sexual relationship. That's allowed. Okay, but they have to cleanse themselves and not go into the tabernacle for a certain amount of time. Why is that the case if there's nothing wrong with the sexual relationship in marriage? Well, it's because God's showing, hey, look, sexuality is separate and distinct from worship. You're not going to be like the pagans who think that sexual sin gets you closer to me. Okay, so he even says, as a kind of a distinction for marriage, that it's good within its own place, but that sex does not have to do with worshiping God in that sense. They have to break their pattern in that. But that's what's going to bring them down. And in Numbers 25, they are going to abandon God and join themselves to Baal. Okay? It's not just that they're adding another god. It's not just that they're worshiping God through an image like the golden calf. They're going to exchange one god for another and apostatize. And God's going to hit them with a plague, and it's going to be really hit them very seriously, and then God's going to hold them accountable. Okay, look at Numbers. So let's go back to Balak and Balaam. Look at Numbers 22. Okay, it says, Then the sons of Israel journeyed and camped in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan opposite Jericho. Now Balak, okay, king, this is the king, Balak, son of Zippor, saw that all that Israel had done to the Amorites. So Moab was in great fear because of the people, for they were numerous, and Moab was in dread of the sons of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, Now this horde will lick up all that is around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field. Basically, they're going to eat everything and take everything. And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of Moab at that time. So he sent messengers to Balaam. Okay, so you got to pay attention because it's going to be a little confusing because the names are Balak and Balaam. Okay, so it's a little bit easy to get mixed up. So he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which was near the river, in the land of the sons of the people, to call him, saying, Behold, the people have come out of Egypt. Behold, they cover the surface of the land, and they are living opposite me. Verse 22:6, this is key. Now therefore, please come curse this people for me, because they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I might be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know whom you bless is blessed. I know whom you curse is cursed. Okay, so Numbers 22:6. Okay, add in here where he says, curse this people for me. Okay, curse this people. Okay, so he says, okay, you're in touch with the spiritual. Maybe you can declare a curse on them that will make them weak enough that I can fight them and win and drive them out of the land. Okay, so that's what's going on as far as the situation. Now look at verse 7. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the fees for divination in their hand. Okay, you guys know what fees are, right? Okay, so that's why I call Balaam a prophet for hire. He takes money and he's like, okay, I can take money and then do this stuff for you. But this time God's actually going to talk to him. And they came to Balaam and repeated Balak's words. And he said to them, spend the night here, and I will bring back to you as Yahweh may speak to me. And the leaders of Moab stayed with Balaam. Then God came to Balaam and said, who are these men with you? And Balaam said, Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent word to me. Behold, there is a people opposite of me, etc. He repeats it. Then verse 12, God says, do not go with them. Okay, do not go with them. You shall not curse this people, for they are blessed. Okay, 22:12. Key spot there. For they are blessed. Now this sounds like what? I mean, I'm thinking of I'll bless those who bless you, and I will curse the one who curses you. I will curse. What does that sound like?
Abrahamic covenant.
Mm-hmm. Abrahamic covenant, all the way back to Genesis 12, and then the places where it's repeated throughout Genesis. So remember, God's unconditional Abrahamic covenant is still valid. Now, Israel is going to have curses or blessings from God based on the Mosaic covenant of the keeping of the law, but the ultimate God is going to bless them is non-conditional in the Abrahamic covenant. So God says, you will not go with them. Don't go with them. Don't curse them, for they are blessed. Now God does, we'll see here, kind of permit him to go, but Balaam shouldn't do this. Okay, so he's trying to be a prophet for hire, trying to make some money. Okay, but he's doing it in a way that is dishonest. He's trying to work around this situation. Okay, now look. It says, so Balaam arose early in the morning and said to Balak's leaders, go back to your land, for Yahweh has refused to let me go with you. Okay, so he does seem to do what's right the first time. Then the leaders of Moab arose and went to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. Then Balak sent leaders more numerous and more distinguished than the former. They came to Balaam and said to him, thus says Balak the son of Zippor, let nothing, I beg you, hinder you from coming to me, for I will indeed honor you richly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Please come, curse this people for me. Balaam replied to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me a house full of silver or gold, I could not do anything, either small or great, contrary to the command of Yahweh my God. Now therefore stay the night, and I will find out what else the Lord will speak to me. Now Balaam here is, it sounds like he's refusing. Okay, but you have to understand ancient Near Eastern kind of exaggeration here. He's saying, he's basically stating the price. He's like, look, even if you promised me all this stuff, I just don't know if I could do it. But stay here and I'll ask God again. So he's just upping the price, his fee for prophesying. And he's like, okay, but I do have to speak whatever Yahweh says to me. I can't go outside of that. Okay, so they stay with him. And it says, God came to Balaam at night and said, if the men have come to call you, rise up and go with them, but only the word which I speak to you, you shall do. Okay? And so Balaam goes with them. Okay, so God does permit this here, but God is not happy with Balaam, because Balaam is thinking, okay, is there some way I can manipulate this in order to get money from Balak, kind of say what God says, curse or bless Israel. It doesn't really matter to Balaam. And now we get into if people know the story of Balaam at all, they know it for this. And what event am I talking about?
The donkey.
The donkey, yeah. It's this is where it becomes like Narnia. No, just kidding. Now this is where, again, though, and I hesitate sometimes to use the word story when referring to the Bible because it's a narrative, it's true, but it is told in the format of there is a developing plot, a story. But, some people would look at this and be like, you guys believed that a donkey actually talked? But you have to think through this. It matters what your presuppositions are. Remember what we talked about, that the alternative worldviews are that the world is one of chance chaos that would make knowledge impossible, or the world is one of just kind of human determination, human opinion, in which, again, knowledge becomes impossible. Knowledge is only found in God, who's the creator and who's revealed himself, and we're created in his image. He says he created the world miraculously, so he can also speak through a donkey. There's no problem with that, but from a naturalistic set of presuppositions, people would say, a talking donkey, that doesn't happen. It's like, yeah, well, that's kind of the point. God, is speaking through the donkey here. But and I'll make another apologetic point on this. If the world is really just chance chaos, can humans or anything else develop language where we can have a common ground to talk to each other?
No.
I don't think so. I don't think we can. I don't think we can develop meaning that would allow us to have language. So it's like their worldview would destroy language entirely. Our worldview can allow us to include, once God miraculously used a talking donkey. Okay, but this story is pretty funny in a couple of ways. Number one, he's going to ask him to curse Israel. 3 times he's going to end up blessing Israel, and Balaam's going to get mad each time. And then the talking donkey here. Okay, so look at verses 21 through, we'll go through 35. But I want you to see how this story develops a little bit. Okay, it says, "But God was angry because he was going, and the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were riding with him." Okay, so Balaam goes. God is not happy with him, even though God kind of permits it. He's kind of probably testing Balaam to see, okay, are you going to be smart enough not to participate in this? But Balaam's going to try to go to kind of finagle the situation and God to get something out of this. And so God causes the angel of the Lord to stand in front of him. Now the donkey is going to be perceptive enough to notice something's right or that there's danger. Okay? Balaam and his servants will not see the angel of the Lord until later. Okay? But animals, I don't know if God just opened the donkey's eyes or maybe just the donkey was sensing things. But this is going to be really funny because have any of you guys, has anyone in here ridden a donkey? Okay.
I've ridden a donkey.
You've ridden a donkey? You've ridden a donkey? A mule? Okay, similar.
He
Okay.
threw me off.
Threw you off? Yeah. Donkeys, okay, so here's some things about donkeys. I don't think I've ever ridden one, but I did have a friend who had one. And donkeys are actually, they're very smart animals. They can be very sweet animals, and they're very loyal animals. They're strong. You can do a lot with them. You can ride them around, stuff like this. But they are also very what? Stubborn. They are known as a stubborn, not easily controlled animals. Okay, horses can be stubborn too, but horses are a little bit easier to manipulate and control. Okay, so donkeys, you cannot get them to move or go somewhere that they determine they don't want to go. And if they're afraid, they will not go forward. They just and you can't. You can beat them, you can threaten them. They won't change their mind. So they're tough animals too. They'll just take it and not put up with that. They just won't move. But so look at what happens here. Okay, 3 times. It gets worse, and then it's even funnier to think that Balaam's with 2 servants, so they're witnessing this. When the donkey saw the angel of Yahweh standing with his sword drawn in his hand, the donkey turned off the way and went into the field. But Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back to the way. Okay, so first time they're on a road, and the donkey just veers off and runs out into the field. Okay, so Balaam gets mad that she's not going on course and starts beating the donkey to try to get her back. So then the angel of the Lord moves a little bit further. But what we're going to see, each time the path narrows down. So look at verse 24. Then the angel of Yahweh stood in a narrow path of vineyards with a wall on this side and a wall on that side. So there's kind of either this low-hanging wall or something blocking, that's down here, around Balaam's legs and feet as he's riding the donkey. Okay, so it's narrower than the road. There's not an opportunity to run off one side or the other. Okay, but have you guys ever been walking down a hallway or something, and there was something on one side of the hallway you were trying to avoid? Have you guys ever done this? I don't know, maybe a spider or something. And you put yourself against the wall of the other side of the hallway and try to go down. Okay, that's what the donkey is going to try to do here. Okay, so it says in verse 24, the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path, walls on both sides in the vineyard. When the donkey saw the angel of Yahweh, she pressed herself to the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. So now his foot is being pushed up, his leg is being pushed up against the wall, so he's being pinched and is stuck as the donkey's dragging him against the wall. And so he's beating her again. Okay, so he's mad. And I don't know, have you guys been on a horse or a donkey that's done this type of thing to you before?
Yes.
I haven't ridden a ton of horses, but I do know how to ride them. I've ridden them before. But I used to take some lessons when I was probably 11 or something like that. And I had a stubborn older horse get tired of having you on your back, which they do sometimes, and brushed me right up against a juniper bush and basically pushed me right off. And now that's not a wall, but a juniper bush doesn't have a lot of give either. But she just walked right through that thing, and I had to pull myself off the other side. So that's what's going on with Balaam, except that his foot is being smashed against the wall. So he's mad and beating the donkey's butt to get it to go. Okay, so now it happens again. Okay, look at verse 26. The angel of Yahweh went further and stood in a narrow place where there was nowhere to turn to the right or the left. So it's like not a cave, but a thing where maybe cliffs on both sides. And it's narrow and you have to squeeze through there where you have rock on both sides. Okay, so if the donkey can't turn one side or the other, she can't even push herself against one side or the other to avoid the angel. What's the only option?
To stop.
Stop, yeah. And so look at what she does. Verse 27. When the donkey saw the angel of Yahweh, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam was angry and struck the donkey with his stick. Okay. I don't know if you guys ever, I haven't, but have you guys ever been on a horse, donkey that's laid down?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Yeah, sometimes if they lay down, it's not like you're going to lift them and get them up, and even if you did, it's not like they're going to carry it. You know how it is when it's maybe you have younger siblings, cousins, or kids you've babysat, and they're being a pain, and they're 2, and what do little kids do when you're trying to get them to go or do something? Hudson?
They fall over.
They fall over, yeah. You guys, I'll do a demonstration. You guys seen this when you try to pick up a 2-year-old, doesn't want to come, and they're crying or whining, and then they're and they just fall on the ground like this? Yeah. I'm around, my friends have a lot of young kids 5 and under, so I've seen this a lot. And I had younger cousins who were 7 or 8 years younger than me, so I'm familiar with that. I'm not a parent, but I have been around. So, but you can pick a kid up, but there's no way you get a donkey going. And even if you got her up, she won't move. That's what's funny here. Okay. So now this is where the story, but you see what's ironic, not just funny, but an irony here is the donkey compared to Balaam is what? Smarter. Yeah. She's more smarter. She's more spiritually perceptive. She knows not to go forward, and Balaam is going forward. So it's like he thinks she's the stubborn one, but he's the one going forward with doing what's wrong. Okay. Now here's where it gets funnier. Okay. Look at verse 28. And Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey. So now God is going to speak through the donkey and said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? So now the donkey actually speaks to Balaam through God. Okay. Now remember, Balaam is a prophet who God is going to speak to. And a lot of people get tripped up on well, Balaam's a bad guy. He's a sorcerer. He's a false prophet. But God does use him to speak truth, this and that and the other. But look at the story that's happening here and kind of figure out what it's telling us. God also uses a donkey to tell truth as well. That God could use anybody for that. That doesn't mean Balaam is right with the Lord. Okay, so he uses the donkey, and the donkey just asks him a question. What have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? The funny thing in verse 29, funnier thing, is that what? He answers back. We don't know what his reaction was, or the reaction of his 2 servants, but he actually has a conversation with the donkey. Now listen to what he says, and listen how mad he is. Verse 29, Then Balaam said to the donkey, because you have made a mockery of me, if I had my sword in my hand, I would have killed you by now. Basically, he's like, you're lucky I just have this stick, because if I had my sword, you'd be dead. I'd kill you. But then the donkey asks him another question. Verse 30. The donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey? I thought that was funny. Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden all your life to this day? Have I ever been accustomed to do so to you? So the donkey asks 2 questions, rhetorical questions that says, look, I've been your donkey your whole life, and donkeys can actually live a pretty long time as well. But I've been your donkey your whole life. I've never acted like this. Can you pick up on that there's something wrong? And Balaam answers, have I ever been accustomed to do this to you? Is what the donkey asked. And Balaam said, no. Okay. So then, look at verse 31. Then Yahweh opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of Yahweh standing in his way with his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed all the way to the ground. The angel of Yahweh said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out as an adversary, because your way was contrary to me. But the donkey saw me and turned aside these 3 times. If she had not turned aside, I would have surely killed you and let her live. Well, see the irony there. Balaam said to the donkey, if I had my sword, I would have killed you. But God says to him, well, if she hadn't turned aside, I would have killed you and left her alive. Right? So it's kind of the reversal. Balaam said to the angel of Yahweh, I have sinned, for I did not know that you were standing in the way against me. Now then, if it is pleasing to you, I will turn back. But God's going to actually move him forward. But the angel of Yahweh said to Balaam, go with the men and speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went along with the leaders to Balak. Okay. So God says, okay, you've disobeyed me by going. However, I am going to send you now. But you say only what I say. Okay, so now God's going to do what? He's going to have Balaam do what? Bless Israel. He's going to turn what he thinks is going to be a curse. He's going to have him actually bless Israel, which is even funnier because that's what Balak is going to get mad at him. And there's even kind of a little bit of a parallel. Remember, Balaam gets mad at his donkey 3 times for not doing what he wants. Well, Balak gets mad at Balaam 3 times for not doing what he wants. Right? He can only do say what God says. Okay, and so he says in here that come and curse Jacob for me. Okay, and denounce Israel. Look at 23 verse 7. Okay, this is what is being requested of him. But look at 23:7 and 8. Okay, so this is the first prophecy of Balaam. From Aram, Balak has brought me, Moab's king from the mountains of the east. Come curse Jacob for me, and come denounce Israel. Now verse 8, 23:8. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I denounce whom he has not denounced? And then he talks about, I see Jacob being numerous and ruling over the nations. Okay, and so he's not going to be happy with this. He says, curse this people. He says, I can't do it. Okay, so he says this oracle from God. Balak is like, wait a second, I asked you to curse them, but you ended up blessing them. Okay, then he does it again in verses 18 through 24. Okay, where he talks about Israel. I'll show you. Let's see. Arise, O Balak, and hear. I'll just start in verse 18. Give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he said it, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, will he not make good? Meaning, God is not going to change his mind or lie concerning his promise. He says, but I have received a command to bless. When he is blessed, then I cannot revoke it. And then he blesses Israel again. Okay. Then 24, I want to show you this one where God refers to, through Balaam, gives us a prophecy of the Messiah. Okay, 24 verses 16, he says, he lifted up his discourse and said, and knows the knowledge of the Most High, and who sees the visions of the Almighty, falling down and having under them, falling down yet having his eyes uncovered. Okay, now listen to this prophecy, Numbers 24:17. Okay, this is one you got to know. Numbers 24:17. I see him. Okay, him is singular, but sometimes him refers to Israel as the group. But this is narrowing it down a little bit. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob, a scepter shall rise from Israel, and shall crush through the forehead of Moab. Okay, now listen to what this says. Numbers 24:17 says a star will come from where? Jacob. Yep. Okay. This star is referring to the Messiah. Okay, it's not, but it also has a connection. Okay, so the Messiah, seed of the woman, star is going to come forth from Jacob. Okay, but in Matthew 2, there are some people who show up to see Jesus born, as where is he who is born King of the Jews. They're putting things together. They say, why do they come to see Jesus?
A star.
They follow a star because they realize, okay, there's this change in the heavenly bodies, which could have been an angel, the glory of God, something like that. There's this change and it's moving. And so they're like, maybe this means that this Messiah, the king that would come forth from Israel, is now there. Put together some Old Testament prophecies. And then they come and recognize, they say, we're looking for the one who's been born King of the Jews. It also talks about the scepter. Who holds a scepter? What job? Prince, king. Yeah. Okay, so he says he'll have a scepter, which goes back to Genesis 49. The scepter, the representation of ruling. Okay, and so that refers to the Messiah as well. Okay, so when the wise men show up looking for Jesus following the star, they think, okay, well maybe the actual star is here, the Messiah. Okay, now here's something interesting. Herod's nickname. Okay, he was not a Jew, but do you guys know what Herod's nickname was among the people?
Herod the Great?
They did call him that. That was his title. But Star? No?
It was like something bad.
No. Later Herod gets bad names, but yeah, this one. What's that? King of the Jews, yes. They called him King of Jews. And so when the wise men show up and they're like, we're looking for the one who's been born King of the Jews, Herod sees this as a threat. Also, they say he will crush and have victory over Edom, which are the people of Esau, which Herod is an Edomian. He's of this group. So he's like, this is a threat to my throne. Which Jesus was actually not in that sense, but he takes it that way, right, and tries to kill him. Okay, the other thing here is he says he's going to crush the forehead. Yeah, what's up, please?
Could this also be a prophecy of David? Because it says it's going to crush the forehead, and also there's the Star of David.
Well, the Star of David, I mean, is not like the one that we know. Is not in the Bible, but yes, I think this would kind of go through David to ultimately to Christ, where this will apply somewhat as well. Eli, yeah, yeah, that's fine. Okay, crushing the head. Where does that come from?
Genesis 3:15.
Genesis 3:15. It will crush the head of the serpent. Okay. In this case, the seed of the serpent is represented by Moab. Okay. Balak is the king of where? Moab. Okay. So when he says he's going to crush the forehead of Moab, basically says that Israel is going to have victory over you. Okay. So he continues to bless Israel. Okay, and Balak realizes this isn't going to work. Balaam goes home. Balak goes home. But then another strategy seems to work. Okay, and that's in Numbers 25, where this is one of Israel's. So go ahead and turn to Numbers 25, and we'll finish up with this. This is one of Israel's worst moments of rebellion and disobedience. Because it is at this point where they will exchange God for another God. They will totally turn from God, and not just like they've disobeyed before, not just like they've added another God or tried to worship God through an image like the golden calf. This time, they are switching allegiance from one God to another. Look at Numbers 25. Verses 1 and following. While Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. Okay, all they had to do, they're like, okay, can we defeat them in victory? Can we curse the ones who God has blessed? No. Different tactic. Let's get them to sin. Send in pretty girls, offer other gods and sexual immorality, and that will bring Israel down. And it doesn't bring them down fully, and not everybody engages in this, but this is a frenzy of false worship that 1 Corinthians 10 warns about this passage and says, and don't play the harlot like some of them did, don't fall into sexual immorality like some of them did, and 24,000 fell in one day. Okay, meaning God kills them in verse 9. Because of this, God brings a plague where thousands of people are dying. Okay, and there's only one thing that can stop the plague, and that's to let's look at this first before I get there. But think about what can stop this plague. How can the people deal with this? Okay, hang on a second. Verse 2 says, "For they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods." So Israel, listen to this language, verse 3. "So Israel joined themselves to Baal-Peor, and Yahweh was angry against Israel." When you join yourself to a god, that means you pledge allegiance. You commit yourself in loyalty and covenant to that God. So they've said, okay, we're out of this covenant. We now join ourselves to this God. Patrick, you had a question or comment?
Oh, never mind.
Okay. Now, what is it going to take? Now, people are dying. God brings a plague on them, and 24,000, when it's all said and done, are going to die. Somebody look at Numbers 25:4. This is a real key verse here. Numbers 25:4. Timmy, can you read that?
The Lord said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel."
Okay. So what is it going to take to check the wrath of God and to check the plague? Who's going to die? Who's going to be punished?
All those who committed,
No.
The leaders.
The leaders. Okay, so this is important. Yes, people are dying in the plague, but God uses the leaders to check his wrath. Okay, the leaders have to die. Okay, now I want you guys to look carefully also at this word in Numbers 25. Numbers 25:4, this word execute. Okay, I need to introduce you to a really important word concept that will go through the rest of the Old Testament and into the New Testament. This word execute actually is the word, and some of your translations may have this, is actually the word hang. Okay? Now when you think of hanging, and I think of hanging in the West, what do we think of?
Hanging.
Just like with the rope. And
With rope. Okay? But in the ancient Near East, hanging means what? Well, it means dying, yeah.
like
But
on the cross.
like on the cross. It means impalement, okay? So we need to put some words together here, okay? Hanging, impalement, I guess, talk it up, and piercing. Okay, so what this word concept actually means is that they are not just going to be hung on a rope. They didn't do that. It's not just that they're going to be get killed by stoning, which was the normal death penalty, but the leadership is going to die a special death. Okay, a special death that God will allow to stop the plague, check his wrath against the people. Okay, but it is the death of violent hanging, piercing, impalement. What this meant was you'd be pierced through the body and hung up. You'd be thrown down or on a tree or a pike or something like this. So when you hear hang in the Bible, this is what you need to think of. And so the word concept here, or to be dislocated, meaning your body would be torn apart, hung up on something. And so this happens a lot of times in the Old Testament, in the book of Esther, when it talks about Haman gets hung. This is what's going on here. But what we need to realize is this sets up a pattern that will become part of the law in Deuteronomy. Okay, so hanging the leaders allows what to stop? Judgment. Okay, you can probably already see where the pattern is going here. Deuteronomy 21 verses 22 and 23 says, when a leader commits a sin worthy of death, you take him up and hang him on a tree, for the one who hangs on the tree is accursed of God. You don't leave him up there all night, you bury him the same day. Okay, so now this language comes from that law, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. Okay, so this is the death of God-cursed leadership. Okay, and we'll come back to this in a second, but let me write that down. This is the death for God. This isn't how everybody dies, right? Somebody commits a sin worthy of death. Often they get stoned, but this is a death of God-cursed leadership. We get that from Deuteronomy. This one's easy to remember because it's 21 verses 22, 23. Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. This is what they'll do to the kings in Joshua. This is what they'll do to certain people in 1st and 2nd Samuel. This shows that Haman, when he tries to kill Mordecai, that God actually has him hung up so that he's cursed. Okay, and then the language of piercing comes through as well. Isaiah 53, they pierced, Psalm 22, they pierced my hands and my feet. Isaiah 53, he was pierced through for our iniquities. Zechariah 12:10, they will look on me whom they have pierced. Okay, so who eventually, what leader dies a God-cursed death of hanging to check the wrath of God for his people? Jesus. So the pattern here is, this is really bad, but this also sets up a paradigm for how we understand what Jesus actually did. It's like, so what does Jesus dying on the cross have to do with us? It means he took on the God-cursed death of leadership. Okay, and so that's what Psalm 22, Isaiah 53, Zechariah 12:10 all pick up and use these terms and language to talk about this is what the real king has to do to save his people. Okay, got to end that.